when you have somebody sleeping and we are inside of his head, and then suddenly she opens her eyes and looks at him. There must be something about people opening their eyes. When they open their eyes like that and they look at him, I don't know, we've seen that so often played in zombie films where somebody is dead and sleeping is like that death. And then she just comes back from the dead, looks at him, and as if it's like some biblical moment where she sees into his soul and she knows what he's done.
Here on this channel, I not only discuss books, but I also discuss movies and music occasionally. It's not a regular feature, but that does happen. As I had mentioned earlier in one of my videos that I was going to watch Detour, the old Hollywood film, and I would discuss it as well. So that is what today's video is all about. And I will not be having that discussion alone. I will have my very good friend Tim with me, who's a retired English teacher and has a very keen interest in zombie fiction and zombie narratives. So without taking more time, here we go with the discussion. So should we start with the discussion?
Sure, sure. I've never done this before, so forgive me if I seem a little bit befuddled.
No, it's the first time for me as well. So I guess it shouldn't be. It should be the same both ways. So Detour, you watched the film.
Yes, yes. I took your recommendation and I watched it and don't understand why you recommended it.
So I've not seen many classic Hollywood movies. Probably that's why, because it was something very different from what I was used to watching. And when did you lose the film? Like when did you feel that the film was not working for you?
From the very beginning, I just thought the acting was quite substandard, and the sudden ending, the way it all wrapped up so quickly.
Okay, so I think I was prepared for the bad acting. That was not a shocker for me because from what I figured out that it was going to be a low budget film, which was like not a very refined thing. But and I was like, this is like just going the way it is, and there's nothing special to it or whatever. But it clicked for me when that girl comes and she sits with him in the car, and and she says that I
Yes.
know you are not him and I know you've killed him. So that twist somehow I think what happened there was that the film was quite substandard up till then. That was one spike which kind of impressed me so much that I was like, okay, now I'm invested, now tell me what happens. And the ending was definitely abrupt, and it took me okay, so I think I kind of had my own interpretation of the ending. So how did you see the ending? Like what did it mean? What happened?
To me, it just was that they needed to finish this film. But no, I want to, before we talk about that, you and I had the exact same moment where the film just really was surprising. When she's sitting in the car and she's sleeping, and here he is on his way to see his girlfriend, and he's looking at her and he's just thinking like a dog. He's desiring her. And then she opens her eyes, looks at him, and I think she says something like, "What'd you do to him?"
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
That's the only
That moment
moment
was, yeah,
that the film clicked. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I'm someone who is actually if I get impressed, I get impressed very easily, and if I don't get impressed, no matter what, how great the content might be, it's not gonna work for me. So somehow that tipping point there worked for me for that film.
Yes, and I think that's because of her. When you have somebody sleeping and we are inside of his head, and then suddenly she opens her eyes and looks at him, and with such malevolence, and she doesn't give up that malevolence for the entire
For
film.
the entire film, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, I think that was the moment you see that there must be something about people opening their eyes. When they open their eyes like that and they look at him, I don't know, we've seen that so often played in zombie films where somebody is dead and sleeping is like that death. And then she just comes back from the dead, looks at him, and as if it's like some biblical moment where she sees into his soul and she knows what he's done, so there's something divine about that. And that's the only scene in the whole film that clicked with me. I love he's pulling the phone cord from underneath the door, and then suddenly he's got enough strength to just knock the door through. These moments. Anyway,
Yeah,
bad
that was
scripting.
lame. That was lame. And in fact, I was thinking if someone had to do an adaptation of this film, and if they had to kill that girl in the end, how would that happen? Because we don't use those kind of phones anymore. And so how would that killing scene be reimagined or reinterpret? I was not able to come up with a solution.
I'm not creative enough. You're the writer. You're the talented fellow. Think about it.
But when you have something so like laid out in front of you in such great detail, it becomes very difficult to reshape it because it's already done. Like um, I find it very challenging to reshape things like that. So but this film is in public domain, so it won't be any copyright infringement if someone rewrites the whole thing and makes another film out of it.
Or if somebody in their personal YouTube video wants to put excerpts of it,
Oh yeah.
hint, hint. Yeah,
Oh yes. Yeah.
you have to show those scenes in your video.
Oh yeah, I can put that. Oh yeah. Oh, I'll edit that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. See, I don't get things when they go indirect. You have to come, heads on. Rahul, you can do this. Indirect stuff doesn't work for me. But coming to the ending, so he's walking and the cops come and then they take him with them. So so I wasn't able to understand that. I wasn't able to accept one of the endings, which was one. Was it like he would go and then he would say that he was not that guy who he was impersonalizing before, and then it's whole a misunderstanding, and he's the guy who had killed and he's still missing, so he's off the hook, or does the whole thing come out as like he is the one who's done everything? So how does what ending? I don't know. I didn't know which one to hold on to.
Well, remember when they first got into the hotel room, he telephoned his girlfriend while she was taking a shower. So if they found a dead body in the hotel room, then they would check the phone records. And that was the very first phone call from that room. So they would track him down, and then the car. So they were arresting him probably not for the murder of the gambler who picked him up while hitchhiking. I think they were picking him up for the murder of the woman in the room. I didn't review the film, so I don't remember names. Apologies.
No, I don't remember the names either.
Yeah.
And I'm
But
bad.
again, this is a still very Christian imagery. He's Christian, Abrahamic at least. He's got guilt, and my mother always used to say, God will punish you for that. So it's very deeply ingrained in the traditional Catholic thought, at least, that you carry around the possibility for punishment for whatever bad deeds you did. And he was expecting it. So that they had to wrap up the film so quickly with the police just picking him up. Still, it's God doing it. It's heaven punishing him when he knew he should have been punished.
Yeah, because he seemed to be quite at peace with his arrest. Like he didn't try to you know uh, do anything to save himself or run away or whatever.
Yeah.
It was almost like he was waiting for them to come and take him away.
He was. If you listen to the voiceover, the narrative,
Yeah.
I think he says something to the effect of, "We will all pay for our crimes."
So that's why it's very biblical from because of that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll, I'll make an observation. When I was in Tamil Nadu 2 years ago, I went to the movie theater to see, oh Lord help me, who's the big star? Ran?
I think you saw Chennai Express, no?
No. It was the super famous movie star from Tamil Nadu.
Uh,
The film before this one, it
oh,
was he filmed it in Malaysia.
that
Um,
that the film with the robot and all.
yeah, that's the guy. That's the
Rajnikant,
actor.
Rajnikant. You're talking about Rajnikant.
Rajnikant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, this film I saw in Tamil Nadu, he played I guess, a gangster who was betrayed. I'm trying to remember. Forgive me if I'm not clear. He was betrayed by someone in his family, but by the end of the movie, he was able to get revenge against the gangster who betrayed him by fooling the gangster's son into believing he was adopted. And forgive me, Ranjin Khan, he,
Rajnikant. Yeah, that's okay.
Rajnikant,
Yeah, that's okay.
it's called Superstar. Um, he fooled the gangster's son into believing that he was the boy's father. So he actually persuaded the son to kill his biological father. And then when the son turned around and said, father, oh, father, the father said, I have a secret for you. You're not my son. You just killed your real father. And then he shoots the boy in the head. I came out of that movie so shocked because as a Westerner, redemption is a strong theme in the culture and in many of the films like this one. I don't know if this guy in the film noir that we watched ever achieved redemption, but he took his punishment. He accepted it. He knows he probably shouldn't have run, but that's the normal reaction. So when the police came to pick him up, he wasn't surprised. He knew he deserved the death penalty that he would be getting. But then again, switch the idea. Here's a guy who already thought so poorly of himself. You know, he panicked when the drug overdose gambler fell out of the car and his head hit a rock. Okay, let's jump a shark on that one. He right away thought nobody would believe him. So here's a guy who already had no faith in himself and didn't think the police would ever take his word for it that he didn't kill the gangster for his wallet full of money and his beautiful car. Am I going anywhere with this? I'm going to be quiet and let you talk.
No, no, no. I'm listening. I'm listening. Yeah.
So just this very idea that he took his punishment. Now by taking his punishment, is that a form of redemption? He stood up. He did what was expected of anybody. When he did something wrong, he confessed, sort of. So in other words, he got his comeuppance. Society, justice paid off.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how I saw this whole thing was that, there's this guy who does not have a very high opinion about himself. He thinks of himself as a very ordinary guy who probably doesn't even deserve much in life. And he's not someone who's like super intelligent or super bright. So whatever he has, he goes with that. And then one unfortunate incident happens, and he does not handle it well, and he does whatever he should not have. I don't know why take his car, you go to the police and stuff. So anyway, so he was in shock and he didn't handle it well. And then that whole thing confused him so bad that he was not able to think clearly after that at all. He just had this one thread to follow, and that was he wants to go and meet his girlfriend, and that's what probably it that was probably it. But then everything was so overbearing for him that he wasn't able to handle it. So for me, it was just like a guy who something bad happened to him and he wasn't able to handle it. So what happens? So it's very interesting, your interpretation, because if I go back and start thinking about it, for me, it's like a life lesson that, you whatever happens, you need to be mindful and you need to handle that situation better. Like don't mess up things as bad, as this guy probably did. So that's what my takeaway from the film probably was.
By running, he simply caused all the negative events to happen. But
Yeah.
if he hadn't also stopped to give that woman a ride, hitchhiking, then
Then
he would have
probably again
probably
nothing
hidden
would have
his crime.
happened.
But
Yeah.
again, in so much of Western literature, of Western cinema, it's that Christian notion of guilt, the the
Mm-hmm.
heart, the dead man under the floorboards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Edgar Allan Poe's, oh good Lord, telltale heart. So there's always going to be that sense that if you don't live up to what you did wrong, then the guilt will
Crazy.
eventually catch up with them. Yeah. So I think it's a very Christian
Mm.
image, if not Christian, at least Catholic.
Yeah, but that's what I find interesting about all art forms that, so someone might have made it with a certain kind of thought process, a certain kind of background of thoughts. But if I am not that familiar with those notions, I would look at it differently and then I would interpret it differently. So that's something which I find interesting.
How do you take that he was a classically trained pianist playing in jazz clubs and thinking himself unworthy because that's the best he could do with his fingers, his gift?
No, I didn't get it. Come again.
Well, he was, when we first see him in the flashbacks, he's a jazz piano player, a piano lounge player. And yet we also know that he's classically trained. He plays, I think it was Tchaikovsky he was playing. You know, here's a guy with an education, an artistic background, and yet he's playing in jazz clubs. Is there something in that that says not only about how low he thinks about himself, but also at that time, maybe the white notion that jazz music was still the black people's culture and black is not good, and a white man involved in the black culture. Also, his girlfriend was, what was she, a dancer?
And she goes to
Yes.
Hollywood, and then he says that it's not a good idea for you to Hollywood because you're not going to survive there and stuff. So if I think about it in terms of that, if they were not looking at jazz as as an inferior art form of the blacks, I kind of get a feeling that he probably had tried to make it big in Hollywood, but had failed and was not probably failed. He might have gone there and might have seen the kind of people, and he might not have liked what he saw there, and then he gave it up and all of that. So probably that, because of that, he was not able to make it big in the movies, and then he was taking up jobs, whichever jobs he could get, and that's why he was trying to convince his girlfriend also that that's probably not the best thing to do to.
Maybe too. I'm not sure. This is just a crazy idea that came into my head when you said this. Is maybe there's something of the competition, the actual historical competition and relationship between Broadway in New York and Hollywood, Los Angeles. Um, many of the, I think, many of the early musicals were just taken straight from Broadway musicals, and Broadway was the site where you had Tin Pan Alley. Are you familiar with Tin Pan Alley? It's quite interesting history here. Tin Pan Alley was where most of the popular songs of the 1920s and 30s came from. They were written by these music studios, which would just employ young musicians to come and write um, a song that would end up being a popular tune. The street where all of these music companies, music publishers worked on, they all worked in the same area, was called Tin Pan Alley because this all day long, the sound of the cheap pianos, ting, 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 sounding like a tin pan with money being dropped inside. So maybe that's also something in the film. He's a New Yorker. probably tried to make it big in Broadway or the classical music scene in New York. And so he looks down upon Hollywood, which back then in the 30s was just, especially talkies were just starting in the 1920s, right?
20s or 30s, I believe, sometime around that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe there's also some of that Hollywood is for cheap, dancers.
So if you go that way, then probably he thought very highly about himself then.
He must have. He must have. But then maybe, like you said, something drove him to failure. But it's very unlikely he would have already gone to Hollywood to try and fail. More likely, he was just bitter because he tried to maybe get a job with a New York Symphony Orchestra or something. And he ended up, the only way he could make a living with his training is jazz clubs or piano lounges where people eat and don't really pay attention to the piano player. That reminds me of KTV's here.
It reminds me of
KTV.
Yeah.
I thought of La La Land too. I wondered if La La Land, or if this was actually a trope that was constantly repeated in 1930s, 40s, and 50s musicals. La La Land was so much an homage to the 1950s musicals.
950.
I loved La La Land.
Oh, it was amazing. We should have another talk about that film as well.
I really got to confess, I don't know very much about film noir, about the genre.
I don't know much either, and I was going to ask you that how do we define film noir? But now that you've mentioned that, I'm not going to go there. But one thing it just came to my mind when you said that there's something about someone opening their eyes and looking at you, and that gaze that they give directly. It reminds me of the opening scene of The Gone Girl. That was one shot which really hit me hard.
I haven't seen the film yet, but I love the novel.
Okay, so the film starts with that tight close up of the girl, and the girl looking directly into the camera, and then it goes like you never know what the person who's looking at you thinking, or something like that. So that conversation reminded me of that as well.
I just saw a movie a couple days ago, probably on Netflix. I'm not quite sure, but I don't remember what genre it was, science fiction or something. But when one character wanted another character to stop harassing a third character, he went up to him with his fingers like this, just straight at his eyes. And the other guy said, okay, never mind.
Okay. Talking about, I haven't seen that. Talking about Netflix, I just finished watching Disenchanted. Disenchanted, it's called, no, or Disenchantment, whatever. That show that makers of Simpsons have made, and it's like a parody on fantasy and all of that. So I had a lot of fun watching it.
Hey, anything from the makers of The Simpsons is a lot of fun.
Oh, you should.
Did you see the Simpsons episode making fun of Game of Thrones?
I haven't seen that, but this whole show is that.
Okay, it's cute. It's cute. I enjoy some of the Simpsons parodies. Just delightful.
I remember watching some of the episodes of Futurama. They were like so much fun. It was not even funny. And then this is one show which I have seen like all the episodes. They're not many. They're just like 3 seasons and 10 episodes in one season or something like that. But it was a lot of fun. And I'm also watching What We Do in the Shadows, that Taika Waititi's show. And and it's really funny. I'm watching one episode per like every 2-3 days because I want to last it for a while. And it's hilarious.
It was originally a film, right?
It was a film, yes. I've not seen the film.
I've never finished the film.
No, you didn't like it?
No, I just never had time to finish it.
Okay. So the people, I haven't seen the film, but the people who have seen the film, they tell me that this show is like exactly that film, just like, snipped and cut into episodes. So, but I haven't seen the film, and I'm just loving that show.
Have you seen his film Jojo Rabbit?
Not yet. I'm waiting. I want to take some good time out, properly sit down with a nice cup of coffee and then watch that film.
It's the first half of it is really funny,
Hmm?
and the second half goes dark so quickly. I mean, really
Is it too
dark.
disturbing? Because if it is, then I'm not going to watch it.
Watch it. Who cares if you're disturbed? Watch it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Tim, I think we should wrap it up. And this was really good, and we need to do it like again on a regular basis. I want to have a discussion with you about Kafka's Metamorphosis, as I mentioned before. And I think we might have like two or three people more on board. And that time I'm going to keep quiet and take a back seat because I would want all of you to talk because I can talk some other time again, and but I need to plan that, so we'll see when that happens. And apart from that, if I see anything interesting anytime, I'm just gonna message you, and I'm gonna just ask you to just do this once again. We should make it a regular
And
thing,
now
maybe
you
once a
just,
week or something.
I'd like that. I'd like that. Okay, it's my first adventure doing this, so
I'm just worried about the way I'm looking, also shabby and everything. You've got like perfect lighting, and the frame looks perfect as well.
you shouldn't have cut the hair.
I couldn't manage it anymore. It was like the summer was here, and then it was a bit too much. I just couldn't manage it. But that's
Thank
okay.
God you have hair, right?
Yeah, as long as I do.
Okay. I'll check out the next film you recommend.
Yeah, I've just uploaded DOA, and I haven't seen that. The premise sounded interesting. It's like a guy who's been poisoned is dying, and he wants to, catch his murderer who's like poisoned him and stuff. So that sounded exciting, but I haven't seen it. Maybe I'll sit down to watch it today. And Night of the Living Dead, the old one, is also one film that I haven't seen. So maybe you would want to discuss that.
My heart is broken.
Should I watch?
To me, it's still the best zombie movie ever.
So should I watch that tonight, and maybe we can have a discussion about that, like next?
No, you won't be able to sleep. You won't. Save it for daytime.
Really?
That film, I first, well, it's I showed it to my students. Now, these are kids who have never seen a black and white film. And they watched this film, and I guess they were even surprised themselves. They're going, ah, yeah. They're so scared. It's a really well done film. You might think some of the acting on the part of the guy who plays Harry is cheesy, but remember, except for the man who played Ben and the woman who played Barbara, the rest of them were all just Romero's co-workers, colleagues. Yeah, so, but I still think it's a really well done film. But people will go to the mat. I think that film has been remade 7 times or more. Because
Okay.
again, it's public domain. But hey, let's not talk about it on this video.
Yeah, let's do it.
Edit this out.
Yeah, yeah, I'll chop it out. Okay.
Okay. All right, man.
Okay.
Have a great evening. It's good to see you.
Have a nice time. Good night.
Good night, Rahul.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.